Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips, and I have so many things to share with you this week, and as usual, the forbidden stuff is in the newsletter where we don't have to worry about people watching over us to determine whether or not we should be reporting certain things. So if you're not on our newsletter list, send me an email at pampopper@msn.com. We can add you to the list. We'll send you yesterday's newsletter and also some of the back issues that we think would be of interest to you. And so anyway, that's where we put the stuff that's sensitive to talk about. Although I think what I'm going to talk about today is kind of sensitive. I'm going to share some government data with you and some medical journal data with you that I think is really important for you to know. Okay, couple things. Remember that we post these videos on Parler and BitChute in the event that anything would happen that would make these videos not available on YouTube for whatever reason. Let me tell you what's new in the land of MakeAmericansFreeAgain.com. 2 conference calls coming up Thursday, September 24th at noon, and this Sunday, September 27th at 7 p.m. All the calls are the same, by the way, so you don't sign up for all of them, and we only can put a few hundred people on each call, and I can only do a couple a week because we are really busy here because we filed, our attorney filed a marvelous lawsuit in federal court a couple of weeks ago. Wonderful things are happening. We're going to make our attorney available to you so you can get to know him better through conference calls and maybe a couple of events even here at the office. But lots of work to do on that case, and we intend to help others file similar cases in every affected state with this COVID situation. It will just take some time to get organized to do that, so please have some patience with us, and we'll be reaching out to you guys who've contacted us and said you're interested in this. A couple of things going on here at Wellness Forum Health. As this whole situation drags on, people are still sideways and becoming increasingly more so. This has gone on, we're like 180 days into this now, and we're still not a free people. And so remember that we have made therapy very inexpensive and available to everybody. We have a group for adolescents, 15 to 20 years old, a little bit late adolescents there, but we figured that group of people needs some special attention. Their issues are different, dealing with some of the college nonsense that I talked about in the last couple of weeks and that sort of thing. We have a group for anxiety and depression, for just generalized anxiety and depression for adults, and then one that's COVID specific. So remember that those resources are available. We've made it very inexpensive, delivered by teleconference, and so if you want information on that, let me know. And then also those of you who are interested in careers and talking about how to learn how to do what we do, informed decision making seems like a good business to be in, diet and lifestyle change, in view of all this stuff that we've been dealing with for a few months. So my email address is pampopper@msn.com. So I want to talk to you about data in medical journals. I want to talk to you about what our chief virologist, Mr. Fauci, has to say about some of the data in medical journals. And I'll just start by saying that just the best way to introduce this is Tucker Carlson had a really interesting guest on his show last week. Dr. Li Mengnian stated during her interview that the COVID-19 virus was made in the laboratory and deliberately released by the Chinese government. She said, yes, of course, it's intentionally, specifically those words. I said in my initial video that I taped back in March that I thought that this was the case because there were a lot of reasons why the Chinese government would like to deflect attention away from many things that are going on in China. Dr. Yan is a well-respected researcher who had previously a high-ranking position with the World Health Organization and worked in a WHO reference lab, the top coronavirus lab in the world at the University of Hong Kong. She said she was one of the first scientists in the world to study the novel coronavirus, fled China, and is hiding and currently fears retaliation because of her situation. But she says in the beginning she was asked by her supervisor at the lab to take a look at the odd cluster of SARS-like cases that were coming out of mainland China in December of 2019. And this is a quote from her. She says, "And the thing is, I get deeply into such investigation in secret from the early beginning of this outbreak. I have my intelligence because I also get my own unit network in China involved in the hospital. Also, I work with the top coronavirus virologist in the world. So together with my experience, I can tell you this is created in the lab and also it is spread to the world to make such damage." And again, so this is what I was saying in the beginning of March that started the firestorm that became like a full-time job just dealing with the COVID stuff. Dr. Yan co-authored a paper on this. It's not yet published in a medical journal, but you can read it online. And I'll just share a little bit of excerpt from that article. "Despite its tremendous impact, the origin of the SARS-CoV-2 has remained mysterious and controversial. The natural origin theory, although widely accepted, lacks substantial support. The alternative theory that the virus may have come from a research laboratory is, however, strictly censored on peer-reviewed scientific journals. Nonetheless, SARS-CoV-2 shows biological characteristics that are inconsistent with a naturally occurring zoonotic virus. In this report, we describe the genomic, structural, medical, and literature evidence which, when considered together, strongly contradicts the natural origin theory. The evidence shows that SARS-CoV-2 should be a laboratory product created by using bat coronaviruses ZC45 and ZXC21 as a template and/or backbone. Building upon the evidence, we further postulate a synthetic route for SARS-CoV-2, demonstrating that the laboratory creation of this coronavirus is convenient and can be accomplished in approximately 6 months. Just a side note here, and I want to talk about another paper published on the same thing. There's an entire chapter in our upcoming book, COVID Operation, what happened, why it happened, and what's next on this issue of the origin of the virus. And some of it's way too technical. I had originally thought maybe I would, quote some excerpts from it, but when you get into these DNA sequences and all this kind of stuff, it just doesn't translate very well to the spoken word. It does much better in a written form. So the book will be out in just a couple weeks, and we'll let you know when you can get it. You can read it that way. But this isn't the first paper. First of all, Dr. Yan wrote this paper that I just quoted from with some other researchers. She's not like some kind of lone wolf here. And the first paper that was published was actually posted in February of this year. A group of Chinese researchers alleged the same thing. And a quote from the article is, "In summary, somebody was entangled with the evolution of the 2019 nCoV coronavirus, novel coronavirus. In addition to origins of natural recombination and intermediate hosts, the killer coronavirus probably originated from a laboratory in Wuhan." And these researchers came at this from the standpoint of something else that I have been talking about for a long time, which is that while it was very convenient to blame the virus on the wet market in Wuhan, that really wasn't plausible. So I have always said that the closing of the wet market and the cleaning and all that kind of stuff was really for show. It didn't have anything to do with bats or coronaviruses, and that's basically what's contemplated in this article. So the researchers say, the bats, or the authors say, the bats carrying CoV ZC45, talking about the same thing that Dr. Yan is, were originally found in Yunnan or Zhejiang province, both of which were more than 900 kilometers away from the seafood market. Bats were normally found to live in caves and trees, but the seafood market is in a densely populated district of Wuhan, a metropolitan area of about 15 million people. The probability was very low for the bats to fly to the market. According to municipal reports and the testimonies of 31 residents and 28 visitors, the bat was never a food source in the city, and no bat was traded in the market. There was possible natural recombination or intermediate host of the coronavirus, yet little proof has been reported. So was there any possible other pathway for this? So, and again, I've written about this and been speaking about it for a long time. The wet market did not sell bats. It's not an area. Densely populated areas like this are not necessarily the places where you're going to find large populations of bats, and the idea that they would have traveled 900 kilometers just to hang out there is not very likely. And these And the particular coronavirus that we're talking about shares characteristics with viruses carried by these bats. We screened the area around the seafood market and identified 2 laboratories conducting research on bat coronavirus. Within 280 meters from the market, there was the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention, WHCDC, hosted animals in laboratories for research purposes. In one of their studies, 155 bats, including Rhinopolis affinis, were captured in Hubei province, and another 450 bats were captured in Zhejiang province. The expert in collection got a lot of publicity for collecting viruses on nationwide newspapers and websites in 2017 and 2019. So this was very well documented, well before any of this stuff happened, anything that we've been talking about every week on video clips. Surgery was performed on the caged animals, and the tissue samples collected for DNA and RNA extraction and sequencing. The tissue samples and contaminated trashes were a source of pathogens. They were only 280 meters from the seafood market. The Wuhan Centers for Disease Control was also adjacent to Union Hospital, where the first group of doctors was infected during the epidemic. It is plausible that the virus leaked around, and some of them contaminated the initial patients in this epidemic, though solid proofs are needed in future study. The second laboratory was 12 kilometers from the seafood market and belonged to the Wuhan Institute of Virology Chinese Academy of Sciences. This laboratory reported that the Chinese horseshoe bats were natural reservoirs for severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, SARS-CoV, which caused the 2002 and 3 pandemic. The principal investigator participated in a project which generated a chimeric virus. This is a man-made virus or genetically engineered virus using the SARS-CoV reverse genetic system, and reported the potential for human emergence. A direct speculation was that SARS-CoV or its derivative might leak from the laboratory. So we have a paper published in February of 2020. We have a researcher working in a World Health Organization lab in Hong Kong, writing a paper with other colleagues and beginning to speak out, who's in hiding because she fears for her life, speaking out about this. And so what does the quote-unquote best virologist in the world have to say about this? Fauci, who we're all supposed to be listening to, apparently he doesn't read medical journals and look at all this sort of thing. He says, if you look at the evolution of virus in bats, and what's out there now is very, very strongly leaning toward this virus could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated the way the mutations have naturally evolved. What's striking about Fauci's comment is, again, without trying to get into technical stuff that just doesn't translate well to the spoken word, you can tell the difference between something that mutates naturally and something that is mutated specifically genetically engineered by humans. And one of the reasons is the cut marks and that sort of thing in the DNA strands. And so my guess is that just like Mr. Fauci never read the Lancet article that claimed that hydroxychloroquine was killing people, and it turned out that all the data were made up by a science fiction fantasy writer and a woman who was an event planner and adult escort on the side. So I don't think he ever read that article, which is why he was saying it was just we now knew from the largest data set in the world. He told everybody at a press conference that this was a bad drug for people who had COVID-19. So the bottom line is that he just apparently doesn't tend to look into anything before he makes his statements, which I think should be really concerning to everybody. It's certainly concerning to me. I would love to be in a conversation with Mr. Fauci and ask him about some of these things. And I'm thinking that sometime soon I might actually get to do that. So I'll leave you with that kind of provocative thought. And so there will be more on all of that. That's enough for today, I think, as usual. Pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy learning more about all the stuff that's going on. My email address is pampopper@msn.com, makeamericans.freeagain.com, wellnessforumhealth.com. Check us out. I've got lots of good news to report this week, too. Lots of bad news, lots of good news, but I think we're heading in the right direction. That's the good news. All right, that's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more news.